When they arrived at Victoria's house, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Adriana and Michael exchanged anxious glances before knocking on the grand oak door. It swung open almost immediately, revealing Ariana's worried face. "You're finally here," Ariana whispered, ushering them inside. Mother's waiting in the study. The hallways were dimly lit, the heavy scent of polished wood and old books filling the air. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they made their way to the study, a room that had always exuded power and intimidation. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes that looked untouched. A massive mahogany desk dominated the center of the room, behind which sat Victoria, her posture rigid, her eyes cold and calculating. "Sit," she commanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Adriana and Ariana's nerves were palpable, their eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. Michael stood by the door, unsure if he should step further inside or stay where he was. The tension in the room was suffocating. "Sophia is back," Victoria began without preamble, her voice laced with a mixture of disdain and irritation. "And you two are acting like scared little rabbits." Adriana and Ariana exchanged a glance, their faces pale. "Mother, you don't understand?" Adriana started, her voice trembling. "If Sophia knows—" "Know what?" Victoria interrupted, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "That you two are cowards? That you let fear control you? I did not raise you to be like this." "But Mother," Ariana interjected, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sophia might have proof. She could expose us. Proof." Victoria scoffed, leaning forward, her gaze piercing through them like a knife. "Sophia doesn't have any proof that we stole her inheritance, or that we had anything to do with Sir Maxwell's death. She has nothing but suspicions and anger." Adriana and Ariana remained silent, their fear evident in the way they clutched the arms of their chairs. Victoria's gaze hardened as she looked at her daughters. "You need to remember who you are. We are the ones in control. Do not let Sophia's return shake you. We handle this with the same ruthlessness that has kept us at the top." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his mind racing with the implications of Victoria's words. Adriana's hands were clenched into fists, her knuckles white. Ariana looked like she was on the verge of tears, her breathing shallow and rapid. "We need to be careful," Ariana said, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. "Sophia is different now. She's stronger, more determined. And that strength will be her downfall," Victoria retorted, her voice cold and unyielding. "We will not let her ruin everything we've built. Do you understand?" Adriana and Ariana nodded reluctantly, their eyes downcast. Victoria's steely gaze softened slightly as she leaned back in her chair, exuding an air of confidence and control that was almost tangible. "Good. Now, let's discuss our next steps. We will not let Sophia win." Victoria's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light as she outlined her plan, her voice calm and methodical. "First, we need to ensure that Sophia remains isolated. We must discredit her at every turn, make her appear unhinged and unreliable. We control the narrative." Before Victoria could continue, Michael stepped forward, his expression resolute. You should tell deep down he was scared, because beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. "I don't want to be part of this," he declared, his voice steady but filled with tension as he adjusted his tie uncomfortably. Swallowing a bit of saliva. "I've already told Adriana. I don't want to be part of any plan against Sophia." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Adriana's eyes widened in shock, her mouth opening as if to protest, but no words came out. She wasn't expecting Michael to say this in front of her mother. Knowing how ruthless and merciless her mother is, Ariana looked between her sister and Michael, her face a mask of confusion and fear. She knew what was coming to Michael. Her mother would pounce on him. Victoria's gaze slowly shifted to Michael, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of disbelief and contempt. She scoffed a little, shaking her head. "You what? Repeat what you said, Michael, I dare you," she said, her voice low and menacing as she got up from her chair that looked like a throne. She walked slowly, her heels making a clicking sound on the marble floor. "You think you can just walk away now? You're very stupid." Michael took a deep breath, his fist clenching at his sides as he swallowed saliva, cleaning some sweat away from his forehead. "Yes, I do. I thought I made it loud and clear. This has gone too far. I want no part in this anymore." Victoria's lips curled into a mocking smile. She walked from the chair with a slow, deliberate grace, her eyes never leaving Michael's. "You naive fool," she scoffed, her laughter cold and mirthless. "You were there from the beginning, Michael. You helped set this entire plan in motion. Do you really think you can just back out now? Let me guess you became soft?" Michael's resolve wavered for a moment under her intense gaze, but he stood his ground. "I don't care what you think, Victoria. I made a mistake, and I don't want to compound it any further." Victoria stepped closer to him, her presence imposing and suffocating. "A mistake?" she repeated, her voice dripping with stain. "You think you can simply wash your hands of this? You are in this until the end, whether you like it or not." She leaned in, her face inches from his, her voice a harsh whisper. "You will see this through, Michael, because if you don't, you will suffer the consequences just as much as the rest of us. Remember, you have just as much to lose." Adriana's eyes darted between her mother and her husband, her heart pounding in her chest. "Michael, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You can't leave now. We need you." Victoria's face twisted in fury. "Shut up, Adriana. Do we need him? No, we don't. I could kill him right here, right now. But I won't. Why? Because he needs to do some dirt jobs for me." Her voice was a thunderous roar, echoing off the walls. Adriana flinched, her mouth snapping shut instantly, her eyes wide with fear. Michael's eyes widened in shock, but he stood his ground. "Adriana, I love you, but I can't be part of this anymore. It's tearing me apart. Your family are lunatics. They are obsessed with power and fame." Victoria straightened up, her gaze hard and unyielding. "You think you can walk away and find peace? There is no peace for you, Michael. You are complicit. You are guilty, and if you try to back out now, I will make sure you face the full consequences of our actions." The room was silent again, the tension almost unbearable. Michael's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with a mixture of anger and regret. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth, "but don't expect me to play an active role in this. I will do what I must to protect myself, but I will not be your pawn anymore." Victoria's smile was icy, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "As long as you remember your place, Michael, that's all that matters." With that, she turned her attention back to her daughters, her voice regaining its commanding tone. Now, where were we later that day? After everything, Michael drove Adriana back to their place, his mind a tumultuous storm of guilt and longing. The image of Sophia haunted him relentlessly. How had he been so foolish to betray her with Adriana? Worse still, how had he allowed himself to be drawn into a plan to ruin her? As he drove through the streets, his thoughts were consumed by Sophia. She had transformed in his absence, more beautiful, stronger, and fiercer than ever. Her allure was magnetic, a blend of elegance and strength that captivated him unlike anyone before. Under her body, Michael couldn't shake the memory of her curves, the way she moved with effortless grace. Is she married? He wondered aloud, his voice lost in the solitude of the car. Is she single? Does she have a boyfriend? Questions raced through his mind, each one accompanied by a pang of regret and desire. Arriving home offered no respite. Michael tried to focus on his work, but Sophia's image persisted, refusing to be ignored. Yes, he loved Adriana. She was his wife, but the allure of Sophia stirred emotions he hadn't felt in years. As night fell, Adriana approached him with a playful smile, her attempt at seduction clear. She gently placed her hands on his chest, her touch tender and inviting. Michael's heart skipped a beat as he looked into her eyes, seeing a mixture of desire and uncertainty. "Michael, what's wrong?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with concern and hurt. Michael hesitated, torn between honesty and the desire to shield her from his inner turmoil. He knew admitting the truth would devastate her, so he chose to lie instead. "It's nothing, Adriana," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm just tired from work, that's all." Adriana searched his eyes for a moment, her expression wavering between skepticism and relief. Finally, she nodded, though her doubts remained evident. "Okay," she murmured, her voice small. "I'm sorry if I've been distant," Michael continued, reaching out to touch her cheek. "I promise, it's nothing to worry about. I love you." Adriana managed a weak smile, but her eyes betrayed her lingering unease. "I love you too," she replied softly, her voice barely audible. Michael pulled her closer, his hands tracing the curves of her body. Adriana responded eagerly, her lips finding him in a hungry kiss. They moved together with a familiar rhythm, bodies intertwining in a dance of passion and familiarity. Their intimacy deepened as they shed their clothes, each touch igniting sparks of desire. Afterward, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Michael held Adriana close, his mind quieter than it had been in days.